So this week we're going to be talking about the early Roman civilization. We're going to be looking at two pieces in this lecture. We're going to be looking first at the early Roman civilization from 753 to 509 BCE, and then we're going to be looking at the creation of the Roman Republic in 509 BCE. Before we begin this lecture, I would like to introduce a quote, a quote from Ovid, in my way, kind of describing the Roman worldview here. It says, "Now I finish the work, and not Jove's wrath, fire, sword, or time bite can destroy it. When it so pleases that day, with power over nothing but my body, my uncertain lifespan ends. But with my better part, I'll be born above stars forever, and my name will be indelible. Wherever Roman power reaches, conquered lands, I'll be read. And with fame through all the ages, if poets' predictions are true at all, I'll live." Now, the Roman poet Ovid composed the above lines as the epilogue to his poem Metamorphoses, sometime around 89. Augustus Caesar had been imperator of the Roman Empire for more than 20 years, and it was the era of the Pax Romana. Ovid was onto something specifically Roman. The Greeks had fathered history in the works of Hellenic historians like Herodotus and Thucydides. However, the Greeks failed to see history in terms of a future. To put it another way, the historical awareness of the Greeks was geared toward the present. They had no past other than a Greek past. The Romans, on the other hand, had a very distinct past from which to gain insight into their own present and future, the Greeks and their history. The Romans embraced history, its past, present, and future, and I'd like to suggest that Ovid's epilogue speaks to the historical awareness of the Romans. Ovid knew that his poem would live forever and that wherever Roman power reaches, conquered lands, I'll be read, in his own words. In other words, Ovid exhibits a greater sense of historical awareness than did the Greeks, and this is specifically a Roman trait. Ovid knew that Rome triumphed because of who the Romans thought they were. That is, the Romans maintained a positive image of themselves, and this meant confidence, optimism, and even a capacity to act and create the kind of world they wanted to inhabit. I'll say that again. They maintained a positive image of themselves, and this meant confidence, optimism, and a capacity to act and create the kind of world they wanted to inhabit. Although we enter a different world when we leave the cosmopolis of the Hellenic age and move to the world of the Roman Empire, the Roman Republic and the Empire, that world should still be somewhat familiar to us, since what we are really looking at is what the Romans managed to do with Greek culture, history, philosophy, art, medicine, and 100 other things. I wouldn't go as far as to suggest the Romans were nothing but a copy of the Greeks. That would be tantamount to asserting the genius of the Hellenes and imitative nature of the Romans. However, the fact remains that what the Romans became was in part thanks to their historical awareness heightened by the presence of the Greeks. So as we begin our lecture here, I'd like to first take a look at how Roman history is divided. So often it's divided into three convenient periods or episodes. The years 753 to 509 BC concern the years of Rome's origin. By 509 BC, Rome had established itself by pushing the Etruscans out of northern Italy. The era of the Roman Republic falls between 509 and 31 CE, at the Battle of Actium. Rome, under the Republic, consolidated its power both at home and abroad, especially during the Punic and Macedonian Wars. The Republic is also the period when Rome developed its distinctive forms of law and government. And finally, the period from around 31 BC to 476 constitutes the era of the Roman Empire. It's this period that most people think of when they're reminded of the grandeur that was Rome. And thanks to the greatest of all the Roman emperors, Augustus Caesar, Rome was able to capture and control all of modern-day France, Spain, Greece, Asia Minor, Palestine, North Africa, and Great Britain. Of course, the empire is also the period in which Christianity made its appearance as another mystery cult among the lower orders of people. However, it quickly became apparent that Christianity was something more than just another mystery cult and was indeed a new religious phenomenon that had to be reckoned with. To be sure, we all have a fairly established image of the Romans in our mind. One automatically thinks of Julius Caesar, the Ides of March, the Colosseum, Christians and Jews thrown to the lions, and a people who were pretty much hedonists. This is the Hollywood version, of course, and there's some truth to this portrait, limited as it is. The image of a wealthy Roman riding on the back of an elephant to a friend's house dinner is one thing, but consuming large amounts of food and drink while lying on one side waiting to use the vomitorium is quite another. The Romans enjoyed the good life. The Greeks had first argued that one must cultivate virtue in the city-state, and with the onset of changes brought about by Hellenization, the Greeks were caught in an identity crisis, and their philosophies or therapies illustrate their attempt to deal with the failure of the polis. The Romans would have none of this therapy. Instead, they grasped the cosmopolis head on, and the result was the Roman world. To aid in this development, the Romans established a religion of culture, a religion that appealed to all Romans. It literally surrounded them. It was only later, around the 2nd century AD, that this religion of culture was attacked by an outside force of Romans. The Romans seemed to have misunderstood. And the result was, by the end of the 4th century, a new culture of religion. As we all know, Rome eventually went into decline and then fell. The date usually assigned to the fall is AD 476, while some historians have pointed to the growing incidence of barbarian invasions. Others have hinted at the mixing of different peoples during the waves of conquest may have forced the Romans to commit racial suicide. The Romans were known for their knack of killing off internal political rivals, thus leaving a gap in the number of individuals who could rule effectively. Furthermore, as time passed, Roman society became a society of gross disparity, a two-class system of the very rich and the very poor. With this in mind, some historians have suggested that Rome's ultimate failure was due to the non-existence of a strong middle class. Still others have suggested that the Roman aristocracy were poisoned by the lead in their drinking vessels, or that there was a shortage of manpower, or that the Romans just got too lazy. And of course, the appearance and growth of Christianity also contributed to Rome's decline and eventual fall. Throughout history, scholars have looked to ancient Rome, the Rome of both the Republic and the Empire, in order to draw upon the experience of Rome's political and social organization. True, classical Greek was glorified for its artistic, philosophic, and cultural achievements, but it has been Rome that has really earned all the glory. And we don't have to look very far in order to determine why. The Romans managed to maintain their world for more than 1,000 years. The Greeks, even under the brilliance of a Cleisthenes or a Pericles or an Alexander, could not maintain the brilliance of their worldview for more than a handful of centuries at best. We can look back at the Romans with hope that we will not make the same errors. Rome then appears as a lesson, a paradigm, and a model of what we moderns ought to do. It was the Roman historian Titus Livius, or Livy, who admitted that the study of history is the best medicine for a sick mind. For in history, you have a record of the infinite variety of human experience, plainly set out for all to see. And in that record, you can find yourself and your country both examples and warnings, fine things to take as models, base things rotten through and through to avoid. Given what I've said previously, perhaps such a statement could only have been uttered by a Roman himself. Today, some historians and advanced thinkers have looked to the decline of Roman civilization in order to voice their opinions that the civilization of the West is destined for a similar fate. They look to Greece, Rome, the Holy Roman Empire, the British Empire, the former Soviet Union, and the United States, and they argue that history indeed is cyclical, that our destiny is somehow preordained from birth to life. flourish and then decline and die. Uh, like any other civilization, America will collapse. Watergate, the Iran-Contra affair, Monica Gate, the tragedy at Columbine, the decline in family values and morality, our loss of faith in the government, loss of faith in anything pure and in general, a collective anxiety about what the future may hold, is all held as evidence that we are indeed a sick civilization and close to death. Oddly enough, such an opinion is not new and has been argued in this country at one time or another since the founding of the American Republic more than 2 centuries ago.